Right now on Upfront.
Taking on Trump. Are you prepared essentially for President Trump to come after you? The Senate returning to Washington in just hours. The president's self-proclaimed big, beautiful bill in peril.
There's no amount of pressure that President Trump can apply to me.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson leading the opposition.
Look, I love Ron Johnson. He's a dear friend.
This Sunday, the courts and tariffs. Elon Musk and how far he's willing to go. Senator Johnson standing by with us.
Lead crisis.
Do you intend to eliminate this branch at CDC, yes or no?
Federal officials abandoning Milwaukee amidst dangerous levels of lead in Milwaukee public schools.
We absolutely want our senators, our congressmen and women to help us.
The battle over who should help and city officials now speaking out. The Milwaukee Health Commissioner, Dr. Michael Todoritis, is with us.
Swing voters speak.
Why do you have to be such an egotistical idiot?
A new focus group asking Wisconsin's critical base about the first 4 months of the Trump administration.
It's so important to talk to these swing voters.
What they're saying and what it indicates, all moments away.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The U.S. Senate returns to Capitol Hill tomorrow, and a blockbuster Republican battle is brewing over President Donald Trump's self-proclaimed big, beautiful bill that recently passed the House.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson leading that effort. Democrats planning to, as the DNC chair said this past week, fight like hell.
It is the height of callousness and depravity to actually put forward a budget bill as this that would actually take food away from starving children. This is an immoral document. We are better than this as a country.
A group of Senate Republicans now planning to halt the bill. This as a federal appeals court temporarily keeps in place President Trump's sweeping tariffs after a 3-judge panel said President Trump didn't have the authority to impose them. And that's where we'll begin with that initial ruling with Republican Senator Ron Johnson, who joins us now. Senator, good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
I want to first start with this federal court ruling from this 3-judge panel on the president's tariffs. 3 judges appointed by Presidents Reagan, Obama, Trump, essentially saying that President Trump doesn't have the authority to impose his tariffs, most of them at least. Do you agree with that ruling?
It is as it is. So, we have a form of government where we have 3 branches. They're designed to put checks and balances on the other branches. President Trump is obviously pushing the envelope in many of these cases, and in some cases the courts are agreeing with him. Sometimes they're not. This is one case where the courts are not agreeing with him.
Some of the criticism of Republicans has been Republicans in Congress essentially have gone to the sidelines and let the president do whatever he wants in these first 4 months. Is that fair?
I don't think so. From my standpoint, I know there was a resolution that would have done something similar. It wouldn't have passed. Again, I think trade is an incredibly complex situation here. I didn't want to reduce President Trump's leverage in trying to come to deals as quickly as possible because, the trade wars are destabilizing. They are freezing investment. They are harming Wisconsin manufacturers. So I didn't really want to engage that. I wanted to remain on pretty good terms with his trade representatives in case there were deals cut that you needed exemptions, that type of thing. So again, you have to look at the reality of the situation, and now the courts have spoken. I don't know what the appeals court may or may not do. Again, I'm not a legal expert when it comes to this, but again, I think there were legitimate issues and concerns on kind of both sides of the argument.
The administration already looking ahead to the appeals process with this, but what should the president do next when it comes to tariffs?
Well, what I've always liked him to do, what I've said he should do, is focus on the main problems. China is a problem. I appreciate the fact that he has pointed that out. Try and come up with a way to try and get them to observe and follow the world rules when it regards to trade. Also focus on those products that we do need to reshore. I think there's a limited list of those. From my standpoint, as opposed to generalized tariffs, probably a better approach would be just offer a tax holiday for manufacturers to come back to produce them here. So I think there's just from my standpoint, maybe a more efficient way of doing this that's going to be less disruptive to our economy and to, for example, manufacturers here in Wisconsin that export goods, that their supply chains are being disrupted and they can't compete globally by their competitors who aren't impacted by tariffs.
Senator, let's talk about this tax and spending bill as the Senate returns to Washington. You have said there are enough Republicans in the Senate right now to block the bill as is. How far are you willing to take this?
Well, first of all of us want to see President Trump succeed. But we also are very concerned about the fact that we're mortgaging our children's future. So what I want to do is I want to make sure we engage in a full debate. I've been pretty open in terms of what I've been looking for. I want to return to a reasonable pre-pandemic level spending and a commitment to a process that will achieve and maintain it. My complaint with the House is they really didn't talk about the numbers. About the only number you heard was $1.5 trillion. There's some serious numbers we need to talk about. $22 trillion of projected deficits over the next 10 years. That would mean an average annual deficit of $2.2 trillion. Completely unsustainable. Debt going from $37 trillion to probably over $60 trillion. Again, completely unsustainable. We never talked about that during the House debate. We have to have that discussion now as the bills moved into the Senate.
It seems like there were some in the House who said, yeah, I opposed the spending in this. They then went to the White House and they came back and voted yes. Is that something that's going to happen to you?
I doubt it. Again, I'm happy to engage in the conversation. But again, I just can't support something that actually increases the deficit. And that is what's going to happen right now as the bill's currently written.
House Speaker Johnson talked about your opposition and kind of the politics surrounding all of this to CNN. We'll play a bit for you here.
And I just encourage Ron to remember, you know, in the House, we have 220 Republicans, a wide range of perspectives and a wide range of districts represented. And I've got to get to 217 votes to get this thing over the line. So as much as we can in as big increment as we can, I think we've achieved that here. And I just want them to remember that we got to deal within the realm of what's possible.
So, Senator, in the end, are you going to cave to get something passed in both chambers here? I'm
not going to. Listen, I like Mike Johnson. I respect him. I certainly sympathize with his challenge. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can't blow it right now. We are blowing it.
When do you anticipate talking to the president next?
I'll let him reach out and talk to me.
And you're not concerned he's going to blow you up on social media or wherever for your opposition?
No, I've got the facts and figures on my side. Again, I don't want to come to that. I want to work with this president. I want to see him succeed. I want to see America succeed. I want us to stop mortgaging our children's future. And that's the promise I made in my 3 elections. We need to do everything we can to preserve this nation for our children, not mortgage their future.
Let me ask you about Elon Musk, Senator. He now says he is officially leaving the Trump administration, his work on Doge. Politico on Thursday put it this way: this is an inglorious end to what had initially looked to be one of the most consequential White House appointments in generations. Musk failed on his own terms, getting nowhere near his much vaunted $1 trillion savings target and making little impact on America's debt and deficit crisis. Are you glad that he's leaving?
Not at all. No, I give Elon Musk a great deal of credit for literally the sacrifice he made, but also, he's exposed so much waste, fraud, and abuse, just outrageous examples of it. Now, we need to codify it. I'm disappointed that the White House hasn't set up rescission package after rescission package and have the president get behind those. And if he's going to twist arms here in Congress, twist arms to members of Congress that aren't willing to cut these grotesque examples of waste, fraud, and abuse.
I was going to say, why haven't Republicans codified any of this? Are the votes not there?
I cannot answer that question. We've been, literally hounding the White House, send us up a rescission package. I don't know what's happening internally, but again, this is where we need presidential leadership. He's got to get behind it. He's got to, if he's going to twist arms, rather than twisting arms to pass one big, beautiful bill that didn't meet the moment, he ought to be twisting arms in terms of passing these rescission packages to actually codify what Doge uncovered. I can understand Elon Musk's frustration and disappointment.
Senator, quickly before you go, there has been a lot of attention on the arrest of Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan, both here in the state and across the country. More than 150 judges appointed by Democrats and Republicans have condemned how that arrest went down. I'm curious your thoughts on the arrest itself and the fact that the FBI put her in handcuffs and hauled her out of the Milwaukee County Courthouse.
Those individuals should be condemning the obstruction of justice that appears that she engaged in as an officer of the court. I think that is outrageous. She should be prosecuted. I hope she gets convicted, and I hope she gets sentenced to the maximum penalty as an example, so other judges don't abuse their authority as officers of the court and obstruct justice.
You think this judge should go to prison?
If the facts bolster it, and sure looks like she obstructed justice, she ought to really be sentenced to the maximum sentence, as an example.
Another busy week ahead on the Hill. Republican Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, like always, thank you.
Have a great day.
Coming up, firing back at RFK Jr. City officials in Milwaukee demanding help from the federal government amidst a growing lead crisis engulfing Milwaukee public schools. The city's health commissioner is standing by with us next.